Welcome to You Are Your Name. This is Daken Ariel, your host. We're going to continue our discussion with Steffany Lovick and Marlowe Shearing on the law of cycles. We were discussing the seeding cycles, the 1, 2, and 3. Every 9-year pattern can be broken down into thirds. The seeding is the 1, 2, and 3. Testing and proving is the 4, 5, and 6. And the fruition or harvest is the 7, 8, and 9. So we're going to continue with our discussion from last week, starting with the 4, 5, and 6. What's the lesson of the 4, 5, and 6, just generally?
Generally, it's that the 1, 2, and 3 you seeded, and the 4, 5, and 6, you look at what you have seeded and the way things are progressing. And life brings opportunity of learning. And so those opportunities can come in what we call tests or challenges, or we can just embrace it as we didn't see the bigger picture. We didn't see all the challenges ahead. And the industry I was in had such a fluctuating technical opportunity that businesses were closing and opening and closing and opening. And I ended up starting a job in a 4 cycle, and it just never evolved. And I learned a lot and I enjoyed it. It was different. It expanded my horizons and it taught me a lot. But every day was like another challenge. But you come away from it and you have gained a bigger perspective. And you look back and you think, would I have traded that? And it seemed like life hadn't given me much of a choice at that point. But you come away from it with a broader perspective, a bigger perspective. And in the 5-year, it was mentioned that there is an opportunity to make a change. And then the 6-year, once again, broadens your perspective of your responsibility to others. And it's just interesting. There's family or someone that needs help, and then you're involved, and you have to maintain your energies and your perspective and offer that support. And you come away from your 6 cycle year, and once again, you've changed perspective. And so that 4, 5, and 6, testing and growing, it's an interesting opportunity. There's always things to learn.
What is the purpose of the 7 cycle, and what activities would people do that would bring that purpose or expression into reality, or the potential into reality?
The 7-year is the beginning of the fruition period, the harvest period, but it doesn't begin with a big bang of ta-da. It begins fairly quietly. 7 quality itself is recognized as being fairly quiet. And in the plant cycle, the bud was produced in the 6th cycle, but you don't see a lot of change for the first half of the 7th cycle. It's there, it's expanding cell by cell, but it needs the pollination. That's what's supposed to happen in a 7th cycle. The bee or the butterfly or whichever comes along, and once that flower opens, then the pollination can happen. And when the pollination has happened, then the future of the species is ensured within the realm of possibility. So the first half of the 7-year, we try to think about life. We try to use our time to the best of our ability, follow the natural rhythm of the cycle. In music, there's this expression of crescendo and diminuendo. So there's a building up to a peak and then a relaxation, and the diminuendo of the energy isn't as strong. So the first half of the 7-year, you don't see a lot of high points. You have possibly some challenges with people if you're not watchful of your expression, respectful of their space and so forth. But peak of the cycle, midpoint in the 7-5 month of July, and through the August 8-6 month, you can have confidence that if you do the right thing and you continue on, always trying to expand your concept, always trying to expand your awareness of the conditions around you, the needs that have to be met, then your fruition can be very positive, very constructive.
So the 7 cycle would be a time where you withdraw a little bit from active effort. And that's one of the reasons we talk about how it's a good time to spend time in nature, because that sort of helps your nervous system become balanced and harmonious. But really, the purpose of the 7 is to merge with a more universal concept, or we could say, develop your understanding of wisdom so you can learn to express it. So that's why the cycle is much more withdrawn, and it's a bit more philosophical and perhaps theoretical, and maybe it's a good time to read universal literature, such as the writings of Mr. Parker, because it broadens your perspective. Did you want to add something, Marlowe?
The 7 cycle, as Steffany said, it's unsettled in the first half, and June can be a testing period. And in teaching cycle class, people will say, well, I just quit. I gave up. And really, before the fruition, it's the last test or that last challenge of being able to sort out feeling and thinking and what our original objective was. And it's that push forward into then the latter half of the 7, 8, 9, and being able to fulfill the biggest fruition that was relative to that seeding time. But that first half of the 7 year is unsettled because the day and age is motion and moving and action and accomplishment. And the 7 cycle is saying, let's step back and let's relax. And what else is there in life? And so it's the recognition of purpose and potential.
Particularly that month of June, the 6-4 month, they always refer to it as the darkness before the dawn. And that's when people tend to quit. But if they know the cycle, they just make up their minds they are not going to quit. They're going to maybe pull back, not be too aggressive, not try to take issue with every little thing that isn't pleasing, but have confidence that if they can just be patient, it will get better.
So even just reading their cycle chart would help them have some objectivity and see that this is just a temporary period where their thinking is maybe a little more depressed or bleak. But in July, things will get much more positive. What about the 8 cycle year? Any anecdotes relative to that from your past 8 cycles?
Well, I've got one. It's always my favorite one. I wanted to change jobs in the 8 cycle. I wanted to go from full-time to part-time so that I could donate my time to a service project that was close to my heart. I looked at all the postings for the type of work I was doing, and nothing seemed to fit. But there was one that was full-time, but it looked like it had a possibility because it was split into 2 parts. And so I was in an 8 cycle, went for an interview, and clicked with the person doing the interviewing. We recognized that it was a good fit. And they actually rewrote the job description so that I got exactly what I was looking for. I'm going to phone that other fellow and let him find his own his own employee because you're the one I want. And this only happens a few times in your life, and it's memorable when it does happen. But it was the 8 year, and to me, it's always been such a solid proof of the constructive energy. If you wait for the right time in the 8 year, things do come into your life as you wish them to.
If you were selling a house, what month in the 8 year would you consider your optimum time for selling? That would bring you the best financial reward.
From about the 18th of July right through to the latter part of August. You know, if you get a deal you can't turn your back on and the conditions around you aren't all that favorable, then you might want to close at that point. But if you've got the confidence, you can hang on and you may get a better offer if you wait until something like the 10th of August. You have to use common sense. You don't want to try and sell your house in a 6-4 month, back in the 7 year. But if you have to move in a 7 year, you're going to pick a more favorable month after the middle of July. In an 8 year, it's your best possible time to get the best possible return. And the optimal time is latter part of July and August.
It's interesting. We were involved in selling a house, and it was my husband's 8th cycle, and I was more just there with him. So I was in my 9 cycle year. And as we met the realtors and they proposed the worth or the value of the property, it was interesting because the range was quite wide. And it was the 8th cycle year, and we're waiting for that cycle. But we also, as we listened to the realtors, recognized that the person that had the broadest view and the biggest perspective of what it was worth, that's the dollar value we were going to get. So it was an interesting lesson of that 8th cycle, that you have to be open to the fact that there is a fruition and that there is more on the table. Because my perspective was, but no, it was valued at something quite different. And the fruition was reached in that fruition cycle. And it was good, like a lot.
That's great. How about the 9 cycle? You've been through a few 9 cycles. Any lessons that you would share with people on how to handle the emotionalism of a 9 year?
Well, you mentioned a key word there, because without knowledge, emotion is going to be the driving force. But with a principle to live by, the purpose of the 9 is really to give to the future. In the plant, the harvest has been reached. The seeds are dropped to the ground and under the mulch. They're waiting until the time is right for the reseeding. And in our lives, whether it's a 9 year or 9 month, whatever, if we give as freely as we're able to, then we are ensuring the continuity of that conscious energy. You give freely and life gives back. You give with a thought of the future. We're not here just for ourselves. That's not our purpose. We're here to fulfill that pattern of involution and evolution and assist others on their path. So your perspective is just naturally broader in a 9 cycle. It's the most beautiful time if you open your mind up to the possibilities. And it's a good time for reading more philosophy, having a little more rest. And so your mind has to expand and think. You need some perspective in your life, and then your giving will be purposeful, meaningful, and very rewarding.
In the first half of the 9, often we look back and we'll see lessons that we learned. We might even meet people from our past and think about, okay, that's where I was. And in the second half of the 9 year, we tend to look forward and say, okay, now where do I want to go? And it's, as you say, the whole theme of the year is service. But without that concept, then we tend to be more emotional. Things are up and things are down, things are up. But really, the purpose of the 9 year is to develop the ideals that you want to reseed in the 1.
You've got to always be thinking forward. And it's a wonderful thing to write down your ideals in your 9 cycle. Because in a 1 cycle, the energy is different. You're focused, you've got a narrower field of vision, you're just all putting all that energy into the seeding. But you don't want to lose those beautiful, big, universal thoughts. And so if you keep a little diary in your 9 year, just jot down keywords to remind yourself. And then you've got that to look back on when you're trying to think about your priorities in a 1 cycle and further down the line.
Well, thank you for spending some time today. I really appreciate your thoughts. Well, that completes our episode for this week. Tune in next week to learn more about the law of cycles. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about the Cyclic Law, you can download our free app, which is called Cycle Chart, on either the Android or Apple Store. Set up a free account. And once you set it up, all you have to do is give it your month and date of birth, and it will configure your personal cycle information for a 5-month window. The current month, plus 2 months in the future and 2 months in the past. So that should give you a chance to evaluate your cycles relative to the months, days, and years. Until then, happy thoughts.